Welcome back to another episode here on the channel Skepticus. Once again, this is an atheist reading the Bible. We ended the last video at Genesis 11, so we're diving into 12. I am going to do something just slightly different. Maybe it's a little bit of cheating or what have you. In the last video, we ended with the story of the Tower of Babel. And there was one key point there that I wanted to make, and I forgot. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit and talk about the Tower of Babel really quick before we get into Genesis 12. The people were creating a tower that they said it was going to go to the heavens. I think you have to take that with a big grain of salt. It says right in the text that they were making the tower with bricks and tar for mortar. It says they did not use stone. Now, even with stone, there's only so high you can get, but with stone, you could get like something as tall as a pyramid, let's say, without just piling large stone, pieces of stone on top of each other, and using the building techniques of ancient times. I think this tower that they're talking about was probably no more than 4 or 5 stories. Maybe 6 stories, although that probably would have stretched the structural integrity of anything that they were trying to build with these bricks and tar for mortar. I bring this up only because the tower was somehow offending God. And the problem was that we were basically cooperating and doing great things and working together as a people, and God couldn't have that. So that's when he scrambled our language and scattered the people all across the earth. But there's a real contradiction here, because since those times, of course, even with many different languages and many different cultures scattered all over the earth, we obviously have managed in the last couple hundred years especially to figure out how to build ever taller structures. And for a tower that couldn't have really been that tall by today's standards to have drawn such a horrific rebuke from the Lord, it's weird to think that now we have these massive skyscrapers in cities all across the globe, and these skyscrapers would no doubt make the Tower of Babel look quaint in terms of their overall scale. But we have not seen a repeat of this from the Lord. God has not come down and splintered our languages again, or scattered us even more, or done anything else that has caused any kind of turmoil. We just keep building skyscrapers, and as these things tend to go over time, they slowly get taller and taller. One country or one city or one company wants to make the new record, and they build something bigger and bigger, the Burj Khalifa and all these different structures, and somehow those aren't garnering any rebuke from God. And yet the first such example of us trying to build tall structures inspired one of the craziest, most extreme reactions from God, which was to scramble our language and scatter us across the earth. So it's kind of comical the way the story is very firmly put, that in biblical times, this was something God could not have us doing. And yet, in modern times, we do this all the time, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. So take that for what you will. Maybe God's gotten cool with it now and just doesn't care. Or maybe it's completely inconsistent, or maybe there is not a God there that's doing these things. I don't know. You can make that up for make that decision for yourself. But clearly a given behavior that garnered this really strong rebuke from God in biblical times now doesn't even seem to get on his radar. You take from that what you will. So with no further ado, we're going to get into the new reading here. We're going into Genesis 12. This is about Abram, one of the most famous people in the Bible. He's one of the founding fathers, essentially, of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. He's revered by many religious people, although I would tell you that he's clinically insane and a horrible individual. But we'll show you more of that as we go through the text. Also, just a quick note, in the story, he starts off as Abram, and over some time, God then renames him and says, "You will be Abraham." His wife, Sarai, becomes Sarah. So if I mix those names back and forth, that's why. Even though at the beginning of the story it starts off as Abram, but I might sometimes say Abraham interchangeably because, of course, Abram becomes Abraham, Sarai becomes Sarah. So without any further delay, here is Genesis 12, the call of Abram. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Now, I talked about this in the last video, but this is once again a scenario where the big carrot that God's hanging out here is that, hey, I'm gonna make you into a great nation. You're gonna have all these people that will be part of your lineage, and your sons will be kings, and all this, and that's great. I think it's kind of shallow, but whatever. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. You'll see Lot's his nephew. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Did you catch that? All the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran. So this is, as far as I can tell, the first instance in the Bible of many where slavery is at least talked about as a de rigueur kind of thing. And you can say, well, it was ancient times, slavery was a thing. But as you'll see, the heroes of the Bible often have slaves, do horrible things to their slaves, and not a word of it, not a word in the Bible condemns this in any way. Now, Christians will tie themselves in the most exquisite knots trying to explain this, and they will do everything to tell you that it's not what you're thinking. No, it's not bad slavery, it's good slavery, or it's the slaves wanted to be there, or they will come up with so many horrific excuses to justify slavery, and they will do it because the book endorses it. So they feel like they have to tie themselves in these knots to justify it, because if they don't, it basically shows a horrible contradiction in their own Bible. Although we've already gone through many, many contradictions in the Bible, and we're only in Genesis, but nevertheless, I just wanted to point that out. I don't need to go through that in much more detail here. This will come up again. But Bible plus slavery, they're down with it. They got no problem with it. It's all good. Abram traveled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Morah at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." Sure, the Canaanites would not have appreciated that, but he said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent. No, he really did pitch a tent. Get your mind out of the gutter. With Bethel on the west and Ai, with Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev. Abram in Egypt. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. We're going to come back to that. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. She's a hottie. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, because you need some more slaves, and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. What have you done to me? He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here's your wife. Take her and go. Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first recorded instance of history of someone being a PIMP. Abram pimped his wife the hell out. I mean, that is absolutely what happened. First of all, he says, okay, there's this famine, so we need to go to Egypt, because apparently the famine wasn't hitting Egypt. But he's like, man, if we show up, me and my hot wife, and we're foreigners, and they're not going to be down with us, and they're going to grab you and kill me. And I can hear that. Like, I understand that, but you're telling me the only place they could go was Egypt. Like, there wasn't any place else they could go to escape the famine. They had to go to a land where he was certain that he would be killed so they could take his wife. But fine, you got to go to Egypt. I don't know if that really was true that he had to be there, but they went there anyway. And then he said, hey, I don't want them to kill me. So we'll say that you're my sister. And I'll be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared. Well, yeah, he was treated well for her sake. He was also given all kinds of stuff. Sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. He pimped her the hell out. This wasn't just a case of him saving his own life, although he did that, but he took his wife, who was going to be sexually taken by the Pharaoh, because that's what's happened. Pharaoh married her, made him one of her wives, or made her one of his wives. So this isn't just like, hey, we're going to tell everyone this little white lie just so that nobody messes with us. No, he was basically offering up Sarai as a way to protect his own ass. And in the process, get kind of rich doing it too, because now he's essentially brother-in-law to the Pharaoh, right? And the Pharaoh's like, hey, I'm really liking your sister. She's hot. I like this. So, you're good with us too. So I'm gonna give you all this stuff, the sheep and the cattle and the servants and all this stuff. Dude pimped his wife out. And as you'll see later, this isn't the only time he does it. This is like a pattern with him. But that's apparently cool, I guess. Like, I understand he didn't want to die. But I guess that was more than enough justification for him to say, yeah, we're just going to go to Egypt, and you can go do the Pharaoh and be his wife. And as long as I'm alive and get rich, who cares? I mean, I'm not a traditional relationship person, okay? And I'm not going to get into all my relationship habits, but, I am more in line with open relationships. But there's nothing about this that says open relationship. This is just pimping your wife out and totally lying, because it's not like he came there and said, hey, I don't want to die, so here, take my wife. No, they made it sound like she was single, just so that she could then become the Pharaoh's wife and he could get his riches. This is gross. This is really gross. The last part of this, it says, but the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. I hope that doesn't mean that she had STDs. Like, did the diseases actually come from Sarai? I don't know. That's reading a little into it, maybe being a little snarky, but I mean, it's definitely not out of the question. I don't know. But finally, when the Pharaoh finds out, he's not happy. He's like, dude, you lied to me. He said she's my sister. And this is a founding father of Christianity and Judaism and Islam. And this is what we're holding up. We're holding this up as a great example. Yay, Christians. Okay. We're going to move on. I'm going to read. Now, I'm going to do something I don't do a lot. I'm going to read 3 chapters like in a row. And the reason I'm going to do this, I'll just tell you up front. I actually don't have a lot to say about these chapters. They're kind of just like this happened and this happened, kind of historical, etc. Maybe I'll stop and make some comment. But for the most part, there's these 3 chapters, Genesis 13, 14, and 15. I'm just going to read them, okay? And if I feel like stopping for anything, I will. But for the most part, we're just going to go through them. Genesis 13, Abram and Lot separate. So Abram went up from, remember, Lot is Abram's nephew. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. Yeah, from pimping out Sarai. From the Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. There, Abram called on the name of the Lord. It's like a pager, like a text, like, yo, God. Yo, God, you there? All right. I need some attention. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. The Canaanites and Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan toward Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The 2 men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. Of course, we're going to come back to that, aren't we? The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. So basically this is the splitting of Abram and Lot. Genesis 14, Abram rescues Lot. At the time when Amraphel was king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, these kings went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Dead Sea Valley. For 12 years they had been subject to Chedorlaomer. That's a weird name. But in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites in Ashtaroth Karnaim. the Zusites in Ham, the Emites in Shaveh Kiriathim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran near the desert. Then they turned back and went to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazezon Tamar. This is a lot to slog through. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and the Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Sounds like Game of Thrones. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot in his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. I know when I read this the first time, I was like, what is this whole history thing about the kings? I'm like, okay, I guess this is what it gets to, is that essentially in the process of this war, they ended up capturing Lot and his possessions, Abram's nephew. A man who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre, the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and the other people. So I guess Abram laid the smackdown. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is, the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, With raised hand I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. So essentially, Abram, after laying the smackdown, does not want to be beholden to the king of Sodom. Genesis 15, the Lord's covenant with Abram. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. God is your reward? That sounds creepy. Okay. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. Once again, the same promise over and over again. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. He also said to him, I am the Lord, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to take possession of it. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, Bring me a heifer. Heifer, please. Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. They're about to have barbecue. It's God's time to have barbecue again because he loves some barbecue. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Adam drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Man, a whole lot of people just got their future given away from them, from the Lord. I love there's one thing I'm going to add here. He says, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. That's not cool. I mean, you're God, and you're saying, okay, I've already said, I think this whole obsession with your descendants and how many there will be and whether or not they'll have great riches and all this is kind of shallow and misplaced. But okay, let's just assume for a second that that's meaningful, and you want to make sure that you have as many descendants as the stars, and that they're fruitful and they multiply, and that they are a great nation, blah, blah, blah. It's still not very comforting to me if you tell me, well, for 400 years, they're going to be enslaved and treated like crap. But don't worry, because after 400 years, I'm finally going to do something about it. I'm going to make it right after they've suffered for 400 years, which means many generations of people will have been born and lived and died under these slaving conditions. They're not going to get to enjoy any of this escaping slavery and come out with great possessions. Most of them will have lived and died under this oppressive Egyptian regime. And what do they get for it? Nothing. But God's like, don't worry, in 400 years, I'm going to make it right. Really? You're God. Why don't you just not let them get enslaved in the first place, or make it right shortly after they become enslaved? But no, he has this master plan where they have to be enslaved for 400 years, which means that many generations of Abram's descendants are going to live in abject misery. Thanks, God. That's really cool. What the hell, man? This is okay. This is what we're supposed to be thankful for. So that was Genesis 15. Now things get really good. Okay, let's go on to Genesis 16. Hagar and Ishmael. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave. And I'm surprised because in this case they actually call them a slave. Sometimes they just call them servants. Sometimes they call them possessions. They call them different things. But in this case, they're saying, no, she's a slave. But she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Okay, put a pin on that for a second. Abram agreed to what Sarai said. Of course he did. It's like, oh, I get to go bone her Hagar. Okay. Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road Shur. And he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai," she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be two." Jesus, this again? We're doing the descendant thing again? Here's all this crappy stuff that you got to deal with, but it's okay. We're gonna increase your descendants. You're gonna have a ton of descendants. Who freaking cares? That's gross. The angel of the Lord also said to her, "You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." Thank you? Okay. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. "You are the God who sees me," for she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roy. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the sons she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. This whole chapter is so many levels of jacked up. Oh my gosh. This is gross on so many levels. First of all, they want to have kids, and Sarai is too old to have kids, and she's not been able to have any kids. So she's like, "You know what? Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Let me be very clear what this is. This is called rape, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as being a slave, I'm not saying that Hagar went kicking and screaming and crying and all this. I mean, I don't know what her disposition was when she was tagged for this duty, this assignment. But when you are someone's slave and then they decide that they are going to have sex with you and impregnate you, I don't care how much you think that you're down with the idea. This is rape. This is sexual assault. And this is what is endorsed right here in this chapter. It's not just mentioned as, well, this is something that a bad person in the Bible did, and we're sorry it happened, but it's part of the story. No, this is one of the the guiding lights of Christianity and Judaism and Islam here. And the way that he and his wife first decided to try to have a family with Sarai was instead, "Here, go grab my slave and screw her." Or to be more specific and blunt about it, go rape her. That might solve the problem. Then she gets pregnant, and shockingly, this causes tension between her and Sarai. And who'd have guessed that? Wow, never could have pegged that one. That causes tension. Hagar might have been kind of snotty to Sarai, but Sarai gives it right back to her. Sarai definitely does not treat her with much grace, according to this text. And Sarai basically comes back to Abram and says, "Look, this is what's going down now. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." And what does Abram do? Does he do anything to try to calm the situation? Does he say, look, you're my wife, Sarai, but now I've impregnated this woman and we're going to treat her well? No, she says, your slave is in, or he says, your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best. This slave is carrying his child. This is now going to be the mother to his first child. And when tension breaks out between Hagar and Sarai, Abram's response is, do with her what you will. She's your slave. You want to beat her? You want to kill her? You want to put her out back? You want to sell her somewhere? Like, whatever. Whatever you think is best. Dude, cold as hell. Horrible, horrible shit. But this is what's in our Bible. Like, yeah, this is a great story. Let's bring all the kids around and we'll read this with them. And this is going to be great family time. So then what happened? Sarai mistreated Hagar. I mean, Abram just basically endorsed it. So Hagar flees. And then it gets more gross because Hagar flees. And then an angel of the Lord comes and says, basically, what are you doing? Where are you going? And Hagar is like, the mistress is all mistreating me and I had to get out of there because that was not cool. So what does the angel say? Go back to your mistress and submit to her. You're getting all kinds of abused. Abram, who's impregnated you, has endorsed the idea that you're getting abused by the mistress. He's down with it. So you have no friends there. You were raped, and now you are being told to go back to your mistress and submit to her. I guess this was before the Me Too movement. Yeah. But wow. That's gross. That's just really sick. And we're supposed to hold this guy up like he's a holy dude. Yeah, that's not what I wanted to see as holy. And then the angel just kind of makes it worse, like saying, okay, you're going to have this son. He's going to be a wild donkey of the man. Like, what? Dude, what the hell? Oh, gosh. This is so gross. This is just so gross. I don't know how people think that this is some great example of godliness. Like, this is what we should hold up as an example to our children. And they should read this in church. And, oh, this is so gross. So, moving on, Genesis 17. I gotta take a breather there because that's a lot to deal with. Genesis 17, the covenant of circumcision. Ooh, goody. This gets better. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you and will greatly increase your numbers. Yeah, we get it. He's going to have numbers. Jesus, man, doesn't it ever get old? Abram fell face down and God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. I mean, wouldn't he be their God regardless? Oh, okay. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Again, are you everyone's God? Like, even if they don't agree with it? Like, what the hell? And you got to feel like the Canaanites, like, their whole land is basically just being given to someone else now, which I guess is happening probably because Canaan was cursed, not because of what Canaan did, but because his dad, Ham, saw Noah naked. So now this is what's happening to the, like, oh gosh, man, this is so gross. Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you. Jesus, you just said that. The covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner, those who are not your offspring. Whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Let's be really clear about this. God's covenant is we're going to introduce genital mutilation. Yay. Yeah. Like, oh, we could pinky swear, we could, blood oath or something. No. What we're going to do is we're going to do genital mutilation. And even though it's everyone at 8 days old, there's no grandfather clause built in here. So everyone needs to be circumcised, even if at this point you're 99 years old. We need to cut off part of your PP. Yeah, because God just had a conversation with Abraham. All right. It like specifically says your slaves, like the people that you bought, like all of them, they just cut off all the, a piece of everyone's dick because it's my covenant with you. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Then God said, okay, I'm sorry. And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. So it's nice that Abraham at least gives a rat's butt about Ishmael. Then God said, yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. Yay, more genital mutilation. Yay, lots of genital mutilation. That's awesome. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great... Who freaking cares, man? But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. When he had finished speaking with Abraham, God went up from him. On that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those born in his household who were bought with his money, every male in his household, and circumcised them as God told him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13. Abraham and his son Ishmael were both circumcised on that very day, and every male in Abraham's household, including those born in his household or bought from a foreigner, was circumcised with him. Just think about this for a second. This 99-year-old dude comes back from talking to God, and when he does, what does he have to tell everyone else? Oh, guess what? Everyone's got to get a piece of their pee-pee chopped off today. Yeah, everyone here. If you're living in my house, you got to get a piece of your pee-pee chopped off today because God told me to. The hell? And that includes the slaves? I mean, there's no good way to couch the life of a slave. Although, again, Christian apologists will find plenty of ways to do it. But just imagine any slave that wants, or any Christian that actually wants to make excuses for slavery in the Bible. I mean, there's all kinds of sick stuff in here, but this is a great one to throw in their face, because you just have to say, look, because you were a slave in someone's household, and Abraham decided that he was talking to God today, and decided that the way forward is that everybody who lives in his house has to have part of their dick chopped off. That now the slaves have to submit to that today. And that's cool. And you think that that's not a problem. You have no problem with this because, hey, it's in your Bible. So, who cares? It's all holy. Oh, man, this is sick shit. This is really sick. But this is what's held up as just the great Abraham. Okay. Chopping everyone's dick off. That's great. Let's go to Genesis 18. Yay. The three visitors. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw three men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered, "do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Like, go get some food, woman. Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to a servant. So choice, so succulent, wonderful little calf, who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife, Sarah?" they asked him. "There in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself, and she thought, "After I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure?" That poor woman. She's like, "Oh, I'm so worn out." Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." First of all, there's a lot that's too hard for the Lord. Okay, figuring out how to murder the entire population of humans without also killing all the animals and going through all this crap about a flood. I mean, that was too hard for him. He had the clunkiest way ever of committing mass multi-species genocide. Sometimes it seems like even just finding Adam in the Garden of Eden is too hard. So it seems like there's a lot that's too hard for him. Even doing a proper curse, he cursed the serpent to have no legs. He cursed a serpent to have no legs. I think there's a lot that's too hard for him. But okay, he's saying, "Hey, is anything too hard for the Lord?" He's like, "Dude, I am the Lord." He says, "I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." that always makes me laugh, because like, this is very matter of fact. She's like, "I did not laugh." He's like, "Yes, you did. You totally did." Abraham pleads for Sodom. When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him, for I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just." Like genital mutilation. That's awesome. And slavery is right and just. so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. Now, keep in mind, he just said, well, is there anything the Lord can't do? Well, apparently what he can't do is already know what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. He has to physically walk there and investigate. All right. It seems like the antithesis of omniscience right there. The men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all earth do right? The Lord said, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abraham spoke up again. Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5 people? If I find 45 there, he said, I will not destroy it. Once again, he spoke to him. What if only 40 are found there? He said, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there? At this point, if I'm the Lord, I'm starting to get pissed off because this is getting tiring. He answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Abraham said, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there? Jesus. He said, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there? It's like, dude, can't you cut to the chase on this quicker? He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left and Abraham returned home. Okay, first of all, I'm telling you, Abraham is clinically insane. I'm not saying this to be snarky. Listen to this, the 3 visitors. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. So when you say that, like, okay, the Lord appeared, like I'm expecting trumpets and angels or some shit like that. No, it says, then it goes on to say, Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. 3 men. That's how the Lord came to talk to Abraham. Just as 3 men. And of course we know that it was God because Abraham just knows when a man isn't a man but is God, I guess. Yeah. No, he's not crazy at all. No. he just sees 3 men. He's like, oh, the Lord has come to me. All right. Wow. And then this stupid bargaining game at the end. Here's the saddest part about this. I mean, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. If I find 30 there, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Why does the Lord have to physically walk into a city and then count the people who are righteous and not? Shouldn't he just know? And if he doesn't know, if there's even any doubt that there might be one righteous person there, is that, first of all, in a modern sense, we could argue, look, even if the whole city is wicked, then is that right? Is that justified to wipe them out? But let's just assume, using Old Testament logic here, that if the city's wicked, they should all die. Okay, I don't agree with that, but let's just say if they're wicked, they should all die. But don't you know whether, like, Santa Claus knows if you're naughty or nice, but apparently God doesn't know. God's got to walk there and walk around and he seems kind of wicked. Maybe he's not. I guess he just has to manually walk around and make these judgments, or does he know as soon as he sees you? I don't know, but apparently he's deciding to wipe out the city, and he doesn't actually know how many righteous people are there. He doesn't know if it's 50 or 40 or 10. He's not sure, which is really discomforting. God doesn't know how many righteous people are in the city. He may know that in general the city is wicked, bad things happen in Sodom, but he doesn't actually know how many righteous people, or if any, are there. So much for God hearing prayer, right? Because if God hears all your prayers, then these righteous people would be praying and he would know they're there. And if he's hearing nothing, then he would know there's no one in that city praying. I can't believe any of them are righteous. Now, you don't have to be prayerful to be righteous, but I'm just saying, thinking of things the way that they would think of them in this narrative, righteousness would be akin to God, to fearing God, right? So how is it then that God doesn't know? I mean, this narrative is basically proof that God ain't hearing your prayers. And you may not want to hear that. I know if you're Christian, you don't want to hear that. But how does this not prove that? God doesn't know if there are righteous people in the city, and he doesn't know if there are, how many there are. And if there are righteous people there, they've got to be praying. Again, according to the way that they're thinking of righteous in this text, in the Bible. So the idea that he doesn't know is wrong and just really gross. And it just proves that God's not listening to your prayers. I mean, maybe he's listened to some prayers. I think he really listens when you throw in some barbecue, because he likes the tasty, the pleasing aroma, like all the meat parts and the fatty bits and all. He likes the barbecue. So if you're going to throw some barbecue in, he'd probably listen. But if you just like, oh Lord, please listen to what I did today, and here's the problems I have. According to this text, I don't think he's hearing it at all, which is kind of sad if that's what your whole worldview is based upon. But okay, oh well. All right, we're going to do one more. We're getting long on this, so we're going to do one more. More good stuff here. Genesis 19. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. As we go through these, I keep thinking this is one of the most effed up stories in the whole Bible. And then you get, a few chapters later, you're like, no, this is one of the most effed up. It's like they're all competing with each other to be the worst stories ever. And this is, the greatest story ever, which I know that's supposed to refer to Jesus, but, all of this is like the greatest story ever told. It's the grossest. It's disgusting, but okay, let's get into this. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. So there's two other men that were with God, because they're all just men, I guess, but I guess the other two were angels. Even though I guess they all looked to Abraham like men, but he knows that when regular men aren't just men, I guess, because he's not insane at all. No. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. "My lords," he said, "please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning." "No," they answered, "we will spend the night in the square." But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Okay, we'll get back to that. Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." Okay, "Get out of the way," they replied. "This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door. The two men said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against this people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. Okay. He said, "Hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city." But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. With the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his two daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared." He said to him, "Very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it." That is why the town was called Zoar. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those things, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land, like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Lot and his daughters. This just gets worse. Lot and his two daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his two, even though he had fought to be able to go to Zoar because he said he wouldn't live in the mountains, he is now living in the mountains. He and his two daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father." That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father," which that's a weird way to say it because you'd say our father, but let's get him to drink wine again tonight, and you go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father. Believe it or not, this does not take place in West Virginia. So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. Oh, goody. The older daughter had a son. She named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites of today. Oh my gosh. This entire chapter is just gross from beginning to end. I mean, where do we start? Okay, let's go back to the top. So these angels that are going to destroy the city in Sodom, Lot has brought them in. And okay, first of all, this just sounds too over the top. This is, before they go on to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom. I mean, how big is this city? 1,000 people? 5,000? I don't know. all the men, so I guess hundreds, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Now, this just feels like something that was put in here just to make it painfully obvious to us, the readers, that, oh, this city's wicked. I mean, really, every man in the city decided to come beating on the door of this house to say, "Bring those two visitors out. We want to squirt them." What? I mean, even in very immoral places amongst immoral people, this is just over the top. I mean, I guess we just have to take it at face value because that's kind of the exercise we're doing. But this just sounds like someone really wanted to hammer home this point. So they came up with this crazy, over the top story of every man in town coming and beating on the door saying, "Give up the two other guys you've got because we're going to have sex with them." What? That just feels really weird and over the top. I guess you could say, well, but if that's what happened, it's a wicked town, yeah. But come on, man, really? Like, the entire town just got together and said, "Oh, let's go bang on that door. We're gonna grab those two new dudes." Come on. And then what Lot does? How does this ever get into a Bible, a holy book? Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing." Okay, that's cool. "Look, I have two daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them." The hell? What is that? And there's not a word here about that was gross, or how could anyone do it, or he's wicked also. Like, and after offering up his daughters to the sexually depraved mob, then he is let out by the angels to survive the catastrophe because he's not a wicked guy. He just offered his two virgin daughters to a sexually depraved mob of men, but Lot's not wicked. Let's save him. Come on, man. Really? This is the crap you want your kids to read about. This is how your God wants us to be. Like, really? I understand this is extreme, but this is to some extent an extension of the whole idea of sheltering visitors in your home, guests' rights. This in certain cultures that takes on extreme meaning. But even in the most extreme case, I have never heard anyone imply that because you brought guests in for the night, and sure, you should feed them and you should give them a place to sleep and you should be nice to them and all this stuff, guests' rights or whatever. But I've never heard anyone say that if a mob comes to rape them, you should offer up your daughters instead. What? No. This is the height of immorality, and this is someone that the angels saved because somehow, I guess, he's not wicked. Make it make sense. It doesn't. It just doesn't. So they keep banging on the door. And the angels had to strike them blind so that they can't find the door, which, I guess when they went blind, no one was touching the door. So then he goes through this whole thing of, bargaining, like how far away do we have to go? Even the whole thing with his Lot's wife. I didn't realize until I reread this just how much of a throwaway line this is. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all of those living in the cities. and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. It's just like thrown in there at the end, like, oh, and then Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. What? That's horrible. I mean, if she was worth saving, if she was not wicked, like offering up your virgin daughters to a sexually depraved mob, if she's not wicked, then her one crime was turning back and looking back, and that for that she deserves to become a pillar of salt. Okay, fine. And then, as if all of this weren't enough, then they have to put the big incest cherry on the cake and say that they're living in the cave, and the daughters are like, there's no men and we're not getting knocked up, so we're going to have to get dad drunk. What? If you want to assume that some of this is supposed to be some kind of historical account, okay, I get people do bad things. Even good people sometimes do bad things, okay? So I don't have necessarily a problem with the idea that there's this narrative that says this is how his daughters became pregnant because they both decided to get dad drunk and get knocked up by him. It's gross, but I'm not necessarily bothered by the fact that it's even in the story at all. But if you're going to have this in the story, there should be some kind of narrative, God speaking to us or something that's saying, that was wrong. That wasn't cool. The same thing with the slavery thing. Like, okay, slavery was a thing in biblical times. I get that. You can't get away from that fact. And sometimes even people that were looked upon favorably by God may have been involved with slaves. But there's nowhere that God just comes out and says, but this is wrong. This shouldn't be done. Or you shouldn't have done this. Or you shouldn't do this going forward. No. There's nowhere that says this is a bad thing. There's just this story about, Abraham had a bunch of slaves, and he decided he had to cut off a bunch of their dicks because their covenant with me. Cut off part of their foreskins so that even though they're grown-ass men, but because I made a covenant with Abraham, now he's going to come in and say, guess what? You're all getting a piece of your dick chopped off today. And nowhere is there any mention of like, maybe this isn't cool. Maybe this isn't the way you should treat people, even slaves. You should just not treat people this way. Nowhere does it say that, these daughters did this thing and it really wasn't cool, but it is the story. This is how his daughters got pregnant. No, there's no context given for it. You might say, well, but, this is more of an account. And they're not going to have context, but if anyone is here to give us context, you'd think it would be God. God's always giving these decrees about what's right and what's wrong and who's going to have 1,000 offspring. And at any point, he could say, no, that's not cool. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be offering up your daughters to a mob of sexual deviants. That's just not cool. It's gross. But at no point does anyone step in to even provide any kind of moral clarity on this. They're just ticking this stuff off like, here's another effed up thing that happened. Yay, God. It just gets worse and worse. And I didn't even realize. I think the last time I read the Bible was probably 10 years ago. I didn't realize until that time when I read it again, like, just how much stuff in here is really, really not just a little off. There's a lot of stories that don't age well. And you could say, ooh, it's a different time. That doesn't really read well today anymore. But there's so much stuff in here that goes beyond that. It's not just, oh, I don't understand the cultural context, or I don't understand what it was like to live in those days. Like, there's so much of it that's just gross. And I don't care whether it was 5,000 years ago or whether it was 5 hours ago. It's gross, period. And there's never anything said in this book that some of these things, while they may be an account of what happened, were wrong and shouldn't be done. You think the Bible would give guidance on this stuff, and yet it doesn't. It just throws these out here, and it says these are things that were done by godly men, the men that the Lord smiled upon. And we're just supposed to go, oh, okay. It is morally bankrupt. That's what it really is. It's not just that I don't agree with some pieces of it. There's so much of this. It's just morally bankrupt. It's the only way I can say it. I don't want to just attack a religion or a sacred text. There's some pieces in here that are not horrible, but there's just so much of it that you can't defend. I mean, I shouldn't say you can't. The Christian apologists will defend it all day. Like I said, like the slavery issue. They will tie themselves in the most exquisite knots defending all this slavery. And the fact that all the biblical heroes, not all of them, a large number of them are known, according to the accounts, to have had slaves. And they'll just, do everything they can to tell you it was cool and it's not slavery like you're thinking of slavery and it's really more of a job. No, it's not. When you're giving your slave to your husband so that he could impregnate her and try to use that as your pseudo family, that's not a job. That's slavery. And it's one of the worst manifestations of slavery is slavery that comes with sexual abuse, as so often happens with slavery. When you decide that all the people in your house, meaning your slaves, need to have genital mutilation today because you talked to God, that's gross. And there's no defense for that. It's just really gross. Anyway, that's as far as we're going today. This one's gone a little long. That's okay. But there's more good Abraham stuff coming up. We ain't done with the Abraham. I mean, we haven't even reached the grossest part of the Abraham. This is like just warm up. Just a warm up. So stay tuned because the next one's going to get real fun. Really fun. Thanks for tuning in to Skepticus.